Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 30th City Council session. May I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Engler,
Here.
Councilmember McNamee,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Newman,
Here.
Mayor Adam,
And I'm here.
and Councilmember Taylor is absent.
Thank you. And we do have a closed session to announce. Ms. Noonan?
Thank you, Mayor Adam. We have two closed sessions. Both of them are conferences with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A. The first one is California Department of Housing and Community Development versus Shangri-La Industries, and the second one is F. Roberts Construction versus Shangri-La Industries.
Thank you, Ms. Noonan. We will adjourn to closed session. Be back at 6 o'clock. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, why don't we get our meeting started? First off, Ms. Noonan, do you have anything to report from the closed session?
Nothing to report.
All right, thank you very much. Can I have you all stand and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance? Well, thank you very much for that. And you know what? I'm going to go right down to the podium for a very special presentation. Hello. Hello, everyone. Hi. Mayor Al Adam here. Great to see you all. You know, if I were to say to somebody, there's a women's soccer league in a West Coast college, unranked, and they're going to fly all the way across country and go to Roanoke, Virginia to compete for the championship, and they're going to beat the number 1 ranked and the number 2 ranked teams in the country, and they're going to win, what would you say to me? You'd probably say, well, that's kind of unlikely. It's maybe even impossible, right? You turned the impossible into the possible. Like, remember Vin Scully when he announced the home run Kirk Gibson hit in the 1988 World Series? He said in a season, nobody remembered. I remember. He did, though. He did. He said, in a year that's been improbable, the impossible has come true. And I really feel that that's what you guys did. An incredible achievement. In fact, let's hear a round of applause for the NCAA Division III National Soccer Team champions, the Regals. I'd like to invite, why does everybody come on down? Mr. Ward, Dr. Varlata, and the team, come on down. Frank, the coach, and we have some presentations for you. In fact, I'd like to ask Dr. Varlata if you'd like to say just a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. It's really nice to be here today. Thank you to the City Council for acknowledging and helping us celebrate 30-plus members, superstars of our campus. Our Regal soccer team has excelled not only on the field and, as the mayor said, beating the odds, literally and figuratively, but they've done tremendous work in the classroom. And as the president of a university, it's always such great pleasure to recognize students that are so holistically well developed. So they're national champions, the first SCIAC team, women's team, to win the national championship in women's soccer. And they are amongst our brightest students. Their grade point average is at the top of the athletic roster in terms of their grades. These young women retain, i.e. come back year after year, make good progress to degree. And they just embody what teamwork means, what collegiality, and looking at the win-loss record as something that is less important than the good of the team. How can we develop as a team of leaders, athletes, and students? So it's a privilege to be a part of this recognition today. Our coach and his team won the national coaching championships. So we are just surrounded today by greatness. So thank you, Coach. Thank you, coaching staff, and to the women. They are on their tour of success. So this is one of their many stops. Thank you so much for recognizing California Lutheran's women's soccer team.
Absolutely, Dr. Varlata. Matt, would you like to say something? Matt has a great title, by the way, the Vice President of Success. Student Success. And what a title. I love it. Coach, congratulations. Hold still. We have the Gatorade bucket ready for you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mayor Adam, thank you. City of Thousand Oaks, all the council members, thank you so much for honoring us here today. I couldn't be more proud of this entire group. Dr. Varlata said so many outstanding things about them, not only as players, but as student athletes. They excel in the classroom with a 3.6 GPA the first semester here. They truly define what a student athlete's all about. But what made them special, what made them great, is the essence of teamwork and what it means to be a true team. to sacrifice for each other, to truly be there for each other through all those tough games. We won or tied 5 games in the final 5 minutes of games this year, which is incredible. That just shows you the grit and the determination that these student athletes had. And to do that, travel to Virginia twice, and to keep up with their grades during the first semester while missing weeks of school in order to accomplish what we accomplished is truly remarkable. I'm honored and privileged to be part of this group and to be part of this incredible championship. Our coaching staff, Dr. Varlata, Dr. Ward, just all the support we get from the university is tremendous, and from the city of Thousand Oaks. For a small liberal arts school in Thousand Oaks to represent the national stage in women's soccer is truly incredible, and it's a great accomplishment. So thank you for having us, and congratulations to everybody.
Thank you, Coach. I know great achievements don't come easy. I know you put a lot of work into this, long hours, determination, just about every characteristic a winner has. You had some great coaching, and I know your parents must have been behind. They probably slicing up oranges in ASO when this all started, right, for the kids? I know we did that for my girls. So, again, congratulations. The coach has certificates for each one of you to present to you after the meeting. And on your way out, we have some city pins. If you'd like to help yourself, feel free. So again, congratulations, wonderful job. The first title ever brought to the city of Thousand Oaks. Thank you.
Mayor, do we have a photograph opportunity? Mayor, we have a photo opportunity in front with them?
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you, Kevin. Let's all go up there. All right, what a nice start to the meeting. And now, we're going to move on to public comments. Would you announce that, please? Madam Clerk, City Clerk?
This is the time and place for public comments. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. 4 individuals have requested to speak, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you very much. First up, we have Lang Martinez. Mr. Martinez.
Council member, mayors, my name's Lang Martinez. I'm a known homeless advocate, not just in Ventura County, but Los Angeles. I'm not the first individual to come out of homelessness or addiction in Ventura County, but it's sad I am the first known advocate to make a difference, bring awareness, and make a change and be a part of quite a few things that have taken place. Accomplishments are, the first one was I was part of removing the encampments in Ormond Beach. I did that with the city of Oxnard, and I did that with Wainimi. and that was when I was with Friends of Ormond Beach. I was also in the first documentary, Humanizing the Homelessness, in Oxnard. I was also the individual that pulled that documentary when they were going to show it at PAL because I didn't believe in exploitation of individuals caught up in that type of situation, and that was pulled, and the money for the tickets did go back. I have more articles accumulated for the advocate that I am than anybody in the United States. My portfolio consists of LA Times, VC Star, Montecito Journal, Fillmore Gazette, VC Reporter, La Crescenta Weekly, Keys to Recovery. Recently, they wrote an article about me in the Washington Examiner. They talked about me in the Washington Examiner. I've dealt with Knutson. I've dealt all the way from San Diego. I've dealt with Bennett's office, Karen's office. I've worked with LAPD. I've worked with the Chief Harmon. I worked down on Skid Row. I was part of the removal of encampments on Venice Beach. I was also down on Halico. I also was in the VC Report and the VC Star, and they talked about that, and I said they will come back, and they have, and that money that was spent was useless. Recently, I did California Insider with Epic Times. First video to go out in regards to homelessness ever done, validated by the Sheriff's Department and the Chief of Police of LAPD. 2 articles that went out, Vagrancy versus Transparency and the millions of dollars being spent. That article in Montecito in LA. The other article that was released out here was in the VC Reporter, was called Transparency and the Funds Allocated. I only have so much time. In the past 3 years, the county has experienced 445% increase in fentanyl deaths. From 2019 by 2022, there's been 655. In regards to the homeless situation, from 2018 to 2023, there's been approximately 88% increase. I was also the person that discovered, in regard to Project Room Key, Home Key, don't give a shit about your key, right? A waste of money and taxpayers' money. How many deaths died at the Vagabond in Oxnard? I uncovered that and had every news media knocking on my door, and I refused to do the article in the LA Times and the VC Star. That article went out on February 27, 2021. I'm requesting a meeting with all of you with a publication of my choice.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is, I just have a first name, John. Oh, here we are.
Good evening. How's everything? How's everyone? Good? Okay. How you all feel about our election process? You feel like it's legit and no problems at all? That's a rhetorical question. I know you can't answer. But there's a lot of people, obviously, you've probably noticed, that are concerned about things going on with our elections the last few years. What I'm proposing to you is to, as our representatives of the city of Thousand Oaks, is to talk with the county and say, hey, we want to do our election process here instead of basically subsidize or subcontracting it out to the county. Probably some of the things we could do is get rid of the computers, the machines that process, because computers are hackable and it's hard to do audits on them. If we could do paper ballots, one day only, like we used to do, that would be helpful. And then we could hand count them at local precincts like we used to. That would probably be a lot more efficient and accurate, and it would be easy to audit, to do recounts and stuff like that. It would also be good if we could have people show their ID so that they could be checked to see if they are registered to vote. It would also be helpful if mass paper ballots didn't get mailed out to everyone, including dead people, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot of weird things going on. So there is multiple days of voting right now. You know, we got, 30 days or something like that? If you look at the Supreme Court had a case called Foster versus Love, and it refers to the U.S. Constitution, Section 2, Article 1, or Article 2, Section 1. Check it out. It talks about the multiple days versus 1 day of voting. It looks like that's unconstitutional to have more than, all the multiple days. Anyway, if you guys could represent, and I don't think I'm going to be the only person talking about this in the future. I think there's going to be a lot more people talking about this. And your constituents would probably love you if you were to take hold of this and drive it home. So thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, John. Next up, Josh Gray.
Thank you, Mayor Adam and council members. My name is Josh Gray. I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Tourism for the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce, here with a few updates. This Thursday at 4 p.m., the Education Council will meet on Zoom with guest speaker Amira Magami of the Thousand Oaks and Westlake Mathnasium Learning Centers, along with reports from local school districts, universities, and workforce development partners. On this Friday, the Chamber's first for 2024, the Breakfast Networking event, will be at the Palm Garden Hotel, starting at 7:30. The Education Council and CVUSD's next Teacher of the Month will be on February 13th at 1:30 p.m. Reach out to me for more details if you have any interest. And then on February 27th, the Chamber's Legislative Roundtable is excited to host Akbar, your City Deputy Manager, for a presentation on the Campus Master Plan for our local business community. You can register for all these events and more on our Chamber website through our events calendar. And then a brief update on the tourism district. Q4 was generally a good quarter for local hotels year over year. 2023 as a whole saw revenue per available room continue to climb, and overall tourism district funds grow as revenues increased in the area. January has seen a momentous shift for the Tourism Improvement District as the marketing firm 8560 became our new marketing agency of record for 2024 after an extensive search by the Tourism Board's Board of Directors this past fall. 8560 is known for their metrics-based approach to growing tourism and is a partner to Big Bear's Visitors Bureau. A core tenet of their plan for this next year for growth is to highlight local influencers, content creators, and voices of the Conejo Valley for an authentic connection and more brand recognition for the region. The February 20th Board of Directors meeting for the TID will take place at Fogo de Chão. We're excited to highlight them, 8560's new marketing plan for 2024, and more as we look to grow in the years ahead. We had 5 influencers in town for the last 3 months of the year, highlighting Conejo Valley restaurants, trails, and one more scheduled early next month, highlighting family-friendly activities in the region. And finally, I wanted to extend our thanks to Councilmember Newman for his introduction to Trek Travel as the Conejo Valley TID looks at ways to expand cycling tourism in the area. We had a great first meeting joined by Hayter and look forward to pulling more cycling into the area in the weeks, months, and years ahead. So, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. And next up, Clint Foltz. Clint?
Hello, my name is Clint Foltz. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks and a member of the Conejo Climate Coalition. I'd like to say thank you to all of those involved in securing the $7 million for the city of Thousand Oaks to help fund EV charging stations, battery storage, related infrastructure, and job training. Thank you to council members Al Adam, David Newman, Bob Engler, Mikey Taylor, and Kevin McNamee. And many thanks to Dr. Helen Cox and John Brooks from the Sustainability Division, City Manager Drew Powers, Deputy Public Works Manager Nader Haidari, Emergency and Transit Programs Administrator Graham Watts, Legislative Affairs Manager Mina Leba, and Assistant City Manager Ingrid Hardy. Apologies if I mispronounced your name or if I forgot anyone. I live in an apartment and would definitely welcome more EV fast chargers as I recently upgraded my gas guzzler to an electric vehicle. I'd like to add that there's close to $10,000 in rebates and tax credits available for those wishing to make the switch to an EV. Check out fueleconomy.gov and cleanvehiclerebates.org for more information. Sorry, that was cleanvehiclerebate.org. That being said, electric vehicles are not a silver bullet solution for the environmental crisis. A 2021 study by the Pew Charitable Trust found that tire compounds account for more than 3/4 of all microplastics in global oceans, threatening zooplankton that undergird marine food chains. So it was great to see that a portion of that money will be going to e-bike charging stations and funding e-bike capable bike racks on buses. So in conclusion, on behalf of the Conejo Climate Coalition, I thank you for securing the much needed funding to help mitigate the climate crisis.
Thank you, Clint. And that is the end of our speakers. Let's go to Mr. Powers for nothing from you. All right, very good. Thank you. All right, on to the consent calendar. Before we get started, I have to recuse myself on a particular item 9I due to a prior business relationship. I want to get that out there. And any items to poll? No? Okay. And I'd actually like to poll an item 9G. So we'll have that pulled, and let's go to public speakers, and I do believe we have one, Ellen Castillo.
Hi, I refrained from comment at this time. I just was checking in to hear the consent agenda.
All right, thanks. Pardon me, thank you, Ellen. Well then, since I pulled 9G, I can speak to that. Well, first of all, let me get a motion for the balance of the consent calendar. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the balance of the consent calendar.
All right, we have a motion on the floor.
Councilmember Engler,
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newman,
Aye.
and Mayor Adam.
Yes,
And that motion passes 4-0 with Councilmember Taylor absent.
thank you very much. I pulled 9G. 9G is a memorandum of understanding with the Thousand Oaks Boulevard Association. That association is contributing over $300,000 to the city for the beautification and for some safety improvements on the boulevard, which we're very grateful for. Things like signage that may want to welcome people to the city of Thousand Oaks, maybe some parking, pedestrian crossings. It's just going to serve to enhance the boulevard, which is our main thoroughfare. And there's one other area that money's going to go to, and that's license plate readers. And Mr. McNamee's been a huge advocate for license plate reader and responsible for bringing many of them to the city. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on that, would you, Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Captain Cook from our Sheriff's Department, as well as Commander Jeremy Paris for working with me to bring this forward. It's using technology to increase public safety here in Thousand Oaks by capturing the license plates of people's movements throughout the city. So when a felony goes down, they're able to research which vehicles are in the area and in turn make an arrest. This has been beneficial for things such as capturing a known rapist, stolen vehicles, Chilean burglary groups, as well as many other felonies. And I'd like to say thank you to this council and the council that has been here before to approve funding. With their vision and insight has made Thousand Oaks much safer because of license plate readers. And I hope to expand this in addition in the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. McNamee. And the beauty of license plate readers is they're proactive. They catch crimes before they happen, not after. So thank you for that, Kevin. And now I'm going to have to leave the room here. So, oh, I'm sorry. Got to make a motion on 9G because I did pull it.
I'd like to make a motion on 9G.
All right. From Mr. McNamee, we have a motion on the floor.
Councilmember Engler,
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newman,
Aye.
and Mayor McNamee. Excuse me, Mayor Adam.
That's okay. Yes.
It's okay. I still respond to mayor, so it's taking me a while.
And that motion passes
All
4-0.
right. And now I have to leave the dais. I'm going to let Mayor Pro Tem Newman take over from here.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll pause a moment while The mayor leaves the chamber. So we have item 9I. Is there any discussion or a motion on this item? Councilmember Engler.
I move item I.
Thank you. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none, I'll ask Madam Clerk if you'd prepare us for a vote, please.
Councilmember Engler,
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Newman.
Aye.
And that motion passes 3-0 with Mayor Adam recused and Councilmember Taylor absent.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newman. Now, on to our department report, and that is coming from our Community Development Director, Mr. Kelvin Parker. This should be interesting. Get a little update on where we're heading for the year. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. As mentioned, we'll be discussing at a high level a presentation of the status of the Community Development Department work program. There have been significant ongoing work efforts which are important to the city and members of the public. The department provided council with a similar report in January of 2023. So in keeping with the recent tradition, we're here this evening to talk a little bit about what we've accomplished and where we're headed in the next year. As part of this presentation, we'll be reflecting specifically on some of those highlights in the areas of major development projects, policy and advanced planning initiatives that have resulted in high demand on staff time as well as consultant resources, efforts to improve customer service through our TL24 land management system, our future work program, and an update on the rapidly evolving legislative landscape at the state level. This slide provides a table demonstrating the number of planning applications submitted for the past 6 years. As you'll note, there's a substantial increase in application activity between 2018 and 2022, going from approximately 400 applications annually to almost 1,200, roughly 1,150 or so. However, in 2023, there was a decline in the number of applications submitted. As the general plan was nearing completion or adoption at that time, we saw a bit of a pause in submittal of new projects. This is typical of a comprehensive general plan update as the community and the development community anticipate a new policy direction from council and they try to achieve those goals. Additionally, this was attributed to an increase in construction costs as well as high interest rates for loans, which often made it difficult for the development community and property owners to bring their projects to fruition. Going forward, however, we anticipate an increase in the number of applications resulting from development opportunities created by council with the establishment of the TL 2045 general plan. And just in the month or so since this plan was adopted, we have seen a significant uptick in interest in applying the policies of that general plan. And that could be anything from a specific plan at Jan's Marketplace to inquiries from those of interest at the Oaks Mall on moving forward with what the council identified in that particular area. Now looking forward, the department has a few notable pending development applications that may be of interest to council, some of which will be before you before the end of this calendar year. The first being the city's Hillcrest Christian School Site redevelopment project, which ultimately we hope will result in 78 new affordable units at that particular location, as well as a new medical building on the corner of Los Padres and Rolling Oaks Drive. Additionally, Chappelle Industrial Project, which consists of 15 new industrial buildings in the Rancho Caneo on Caneo Center Drive, is slated to move forward this calendar year, as well as a mixed-use project at 500 Thousand Oaks Boulevard, which is commonly referred to as the Pumpkin Patch Lot or Christmas Tree Lot, depending on the season. Of the applications that were processed in the last year, these are a few of the significant projects that were brought to completion with City Council action or Planning Commission during that time. Some of the projects of note include the Navigation Center, the Jan's Marketplace Hotel, which recently went through in the fall of last year, as well as the project on the Amgen site at 2150 Hillcrest Drive, which resulted in 33 new units as well as 33 affordable units. The list of investment in the community could go on and on. On an annual basis, we receive hundreds of applications, so this is just a slice of a few of note. I'd like to touch on some of the highlights that we've had in the current and advanced planning work efforts as well. Approximately 4,300 customers entered the permit center and were served at the public counter. And a little over 700 applications, as noted on the previous slide, were received by the planning department this year. A significant amount of work also occurred on the advanced planning front during this time. As you all may recall, staff released a draft general plan. We revised our housing element. We went to the public for review and comment. We had multiple public engagement activities and then brought forward these documents to the Planning Commission and City Council for direction, which was ultimately adopted in December of last year. Staff also completed an adoption of the inclusionary housing ordinance, which now requires certain projects to include affordable units, which will help us meet our community RHNA housing needs. These advanced planning work efforts meet two of Council's top 10 priorities identified for the 23 and 24 calendar years. In the building division, there were over 8,100 unique customers that darkened the permit center looking for assistance in one area or another. These numbers do not represent those assisted virtually, either over email, the phone, or through our TL24 system. So approximately 7,600 permits were issued in the last calendar year, with over 21,000 inspections taking place citywide. Just through these permits and inspections, that represents over $180 million in new investment in the community, which is a strong indicator of where we are as a group, as a city, and a community. Additionally, the building division launched, I think I skipped the slide. The building division launched two programs of significance. One is the Solar App Program, which was a result of SB 379, which essentially streamlined the solar application and permitting process. Additionally, there was an application assistant tool to help guide the public in using the new TL24 land use system. So the total number of customers sort of declared, the valuation of the permits that were declared was a representation of just the actual building permits, and it doesn't take into account the sort of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing permits that are associated with that. So on this slide, we review online applications versus those received in person at the permit counter. So prior to TL24 being launched in November of 2022, in response to the pandemic, 100% of the planning applications were received virtually via online. However, at that time, we didn't have the capability to extend that to the building division. So at that time, we still were 100% in terms of paper plans. And you may recall we had a process in place to process that and deal with it. So we were essentially operating two different systems to serve the public at that time. Once we reintroduced the public counter to that mix, we noticed a trend of 60% of the planning applications are now currently submitted online, while the building permit applications are up to 40% of the activity that we see on a daily basis. And again, I just want to point out that this is purely electronic. It doesn't take into account those that we serve daily in the permit center. So new online applications spiked in the month of December for both planning and building, and that's fairly typical as people tend to try to close out their fiscal year strong on a commercial perspective, as well as those individuals in the community, the residents, like to complete their projects prior to taking some well-deserved time off. This graph represents a month-to-month trend of issued permits in the building division. It depicts the construction activity trends, and it shows a difference, primarily if you look at the graph between summer months and winter months, and that's fairly typical with construction. And part of it is just simply days being longer, which allows for more of a safe working environment with that time change. Additionally, the weather tends to be warmer, which allows various stages of the construction process to move forward in a timely fashion. The weather's warm, so paint dries quicker, as opposed to the winter, where there may be inclement weather as well as cooler temperatures, which takes more time for things like cement to dry, which tends to prolong that process, which is why we see a change and a variation in that particular activity. This slide depicts a graph of building services development activity over the past 6 years. Similar to the planning side, the applications submitted between 2018 and 2022, we saw a marked increase in the activity on that side. However, in 2023, the total number of permits returned to pre-pandemic levels. And again, the reasoning for that is going to be similar: the cost of commodities. There's also changes in interest rate environment. But additionally, the unique circumstance here on the building side is that we entered a new building code cycle. So as typical, which happens every 3 years when we enter a new building code, there is a mad dash for submittal to have your project considered under the previous code before the new code takes effect. And true to form, that's exactly what we experienced here. Mentioned previously the solar app program that we initiated, but just to sort of refresh, this requires the virtual review of small residential solar panels as well as solar battery storage systems. This permit type is automatically issued via the internet if you meet certain minimum criteria. So effectively, it turned a ministerial process into one that doesn't necessarily require as much staff time, assuming you meet those minimum requirements. Just with this process being in place only for a short period of time, we tested this for 30 days in September of last year with the go-live date in October. And since that time, we've had 77 permit applications submitted, 23 of which were issued ministerially. However, 54 permits during that period saved staff time just in terms of processing, because effectively customers were able to serve themselves. This is not always the case, and it's not the right process for all processes or permits or applications. But in instances where it is a ministerial process that doesn't require much review or staff time and you meet that minimum criteria, it makes perfectly good sense. And in just those 54 permits, we estimate that we save roughly 135 hours of staff time. For the code division, they remain fairly static throughout this 6-year review period. On a daily basis, to a large degree, they open roughly 400 to 500 cases a year and close on average close to 700 cases a year. This is by no means all of the contact that the code enforcement or code compliance department has on an annual basis. Our process is complaint driven, meaning we are not a proactive enforcement program, but The cases that you see here on the screen just depict those that rose to the level of actual further investigation. There's almost 1,800 contacts or reports for cases that didn't rise to the level of a violation that didn't make this chart. But each one of those calls, emails, text messages, or notes passed along to us through the permit center has to be investigated, irregardless of whether a case is opened or not. So just keep that in mind when you review a slide like this. Moving forward, there is a significant work effort in implementing the adopted 2045 general plan, as well as the six-cycle housing element. Some of the tasks that we'll have moving forward in implementing that plan included starting a comprehensive zoning code update, creation of mixed-use development standards, as well as a land use map to implement that general plan. And staff will begin to review and update each and every specific plan that's currently on the books right now in the city. There's a process by which we have to go through and ensure that it complies with the new policies placed by council with the adoption of the general plan. Additionally, just to keep up with the changing slate of state legislation, there's 12 unique municipal code amendments that are moving forward just to help us implement that general plan and to keep us up to date in the changes in state legislation that just happens on an annual basis, it seems, these days. So other work programs that the department is taking place, that's taking place in the department is the 2.0 version of TL24. That was a report that council saw late last year. That's already underway, and work efforts are taking place to increase the utilization and efficiency of that program. So throughout the course of the next year, there will be various stages and operations in place to help maximize efficiencies in that particular area. So on the legislative front, we're continuing to experience a rapidly evolving landscape in this particular area. In 2023, there was a slew of new legislation and bills being passed that have far-reaching impacts on a community such as Thousand Oaks. On the housing front alone, there were over 50 bills in this particular area. So rather than take you through an exhaustive list of all of those bills, we've selected a few to highlight that may be of interest to the council and may be applicable to the community at some point. The first two bills we'd like to address are in regards to accessory dwelling units, which is a fairly hot topic, and we received quite a few permit applications to that effect in the city. So prior to enactment of AB 1332, local agencies were required to review and approve or deny an ADU in roughly a 60-day time frame. Since the passage of this particular bill, that process has been streamlined on the state level to require us to have pre-approved plans to fit this on the city's website prior to January 1 of 2025. So that's one of those work programs we'll be moving forward to create standard plans in this arena over the course of the next year. Other components of that law will include approval and denial of ADUs based on established standards. So we'll be moving forward. Council has already initiated a municipal code update in that arena that we'll be coming back to you with shortly, as well as the local agency can still charge the same fees, which are our costs with processing these applications, even though that process has been streamlined. The second bill related to ADUs would be AB 1033. We received a number of inquiries about this bill already, and just to clarify, this gives homeowners the ability to sell ADUs as a condominium if City Council opts to enact this legislation. Right now, it's completely optional. City Council has not provided that direction. We have not done so. It does not apply to us here in Thousand Oaks as we speak. However, that's something that is on the books that council could at some point decide to take action on or not. Regardless, there are calls that we receive occasionally asking questions related to this legislation. Another strategy for housing would be SB4, which allows housing development to be built on land of certain institutions, such as religious facilities or educational institutions. It's to streamline that process. This bill includes a number of components to be considered, some of which would be you would have to be a qualified developer to enact it, which would be an education institution or a church of some sort. Additionally, the project would have to be 100% affordable at lower income levels with a cap on moderate units at 20% of the project. Additionally, prevailing wage would have to be used in order to enact this legislation. And just as one of the parameters associated with it, it cannot be adjacent because it's housing to certain uses such as industrial uses. And that's written clearly there in the legislation. Next, we'll discuss SB 684. This bill was created in an effort for the need to address the missing middle in housing. It streamlines approvals for home qualifying for infill development. Typically, it's for projects of 10 homes or less, where infrastructure is already in place from utilities to other services, and it's on lots typically less than 5 acres in size. Projects that take advantage of this legislation are exempt from CEQA. However, they're still required to pull building permits and go through that review process just as part of it. So this law is designed specifically to capture infill sites, which we do have some. Just by the nature and layout of our city, it would not apply to our open space areas or our protected rings. And for us, we're in a position where all of the easily developed parcels have already done so. So the parcels that we see today typically have some challenges, which may be a constraint in applying this particular legislation. Lastly, we'll address SB 821, which intends to resolve the general plan and zoning code conflicts. As with any comprehensive general plan update, once the new general plan is adopted, the zoning code must be updated in order to comply with the new rules and regulations and policies set forth in the general plan. It's part of the natural order of things, and from a planning perspective, when you update a general plan, it's the natural course of action to update your zoning code. This is something that we have already kicked off, and we're looking forward to updating the zoning code to comply with the policies in the general plan. The nuance related to this particular bill, however, is if we were to receive a project to take advantage of our policies in the general plan prior to updating the zoning code, it would give us 6 months to do so prior to processing that project. We don't anticipate this necessarily being a problem. As I mentioned, we've already moving forward with things such as the mixed-use development standards and the zoning code update. We've already taken measures to implement that. But if that were the case, this legislation provides remedies by which a developer could go to court to have the court force the city to comply with the general plan standards prior to the zoning code update. That whole process does take time, and by the time they get through that, we're fairly confident that we can update our general plan, our zoning code within that time frame. Lastly, I'll address COSCA, which is a joint power authority, but is somewhat housed in the Community Development Department. It was another active year for COSCA on that front. Although the organization is largely in a maintenance phase of operations, they did complete 5 acquisitions this year. The vast majority of their work program consisted of system maintenance, either from trails or habitat restoration. And one notable portion of their work program is a large sort of partnering with the community, either through volunteers or students on various programs throughout the year. So with that said, staff recommends that City Council receive the update regarding progress on many factors influencing operations in the department. This concludes staff presentation. In addition to myself, we're joined by Jesse Deonda, our building official, Fabiola Zalaya Meliker, our Deputy Director of Community Development, and Steve Kearns, our Development Planning Manager. And with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions if there should be any.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Very informative report. I see the state's been hard at work to show us how, what, and where to build housing in the city. Appreciate that. Any questions? Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you very much, Mr. Parker, for this report. It's funny because sometimes we hear from residents who say Thousand Oaks never builds anything, and we hear from other residents who say Thousand Oaks is building 5,000 buildings every month, and what can you do about it? So it's very helpful to have, and that's at the 50,000 foot level, without getting into the many nuanced areas that you went through in this report. So this isn't so much a question as a request. It's very helpful to have all this data and to be able to share it with residents. So thank you, thank your staff for preparing this. The request part of this is if this report could be made part of the public record, I don't know if this is a request for you or for our clerk, but if it could be a separate attachment, so when questions come up about, hey, what does this law say, or how did our what number of ADUs were built last or approved last year, that sort of thing. There's something to point to. I think that would be a great service. So that's all my request is let's not keep all the good stuff here in this room. Let's have it be a permanent resource. Thank you.
Mr. Engler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thanks, I'll echo the applause for a good report. It's nice to get this every year, get us up to speed on what's going on and what's happened in the last year. Keeping us in tune with what the state has directed us to do. Speaking of the state directing us what to do, we do have we're in the 6th arena cycle, if I remember the number correct. We have approved quite a few residentials in this last year or so. How are we doing meeting our arena? Does it look like we're going to be coming in somewhat close to what we need, or how are we doing?
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to our planning manager, Steve Kearns, who can talk specifics as it relates to the number of affordable units. But compared to our history, we are off to a good start in terms of taking strides in meeting our arena numbers as prescribed by the state. In addition to the projects that you alluded to in your comments, the city now has an inclusionary housing ordinance, which takes into account affordable housing for each project that moves forward. In terms of the details related to those units, I'll turn it over to Mr. Kearns.
Thank you, Ms. Parker, and thanks for the question, Councilmember Engler. Last year was a busy year for the Planning Commission and City Council, making decisions on very important residential projects, and I'll touch on a few of them. As you may recall, there was a project on Long Court. It was a conversion of or replacement of a commercial office building with 73 apartment units. That project is actually in with us, going through the structural plan check now, so that's exciting to have them actually in the process going forward to construction. Chappelle, the Arroyo Villa apartment expansion, that came before this body. That's 26 apartments. They had 4 moderate units. They go back to the Long Court, they had 8 affordable units. I'm going to touch on the IMT, the Thousand Oaks Ranch, the project where the former Kmart was located. They are moving very quickly through the process. That's 420 units, 54 affordable. So that was basically half the affordable units for the past year. Go a little bit past last year. But that has 54 affordable units, and they are moving quickly, going through the plan check process. They've started their site preparation. The demo works occurred. So all of that's occurring. The 2150 Hillcrest project, that was approved. That includes 333 units. 30 of those were affordable. And then coming ahead this calendar year, we'll have another 328 units before you for the what's referred to as the Nazareth Beacon property. Cherry Tree Development is our applicant, so we're working with them to get them shaped up to be in front of you.
And just to clarify that one point, for arena purposes, we don't actually count the units until the building permits are issued. However, the table has been set for that to happen, and we're really looking forward to developers moving forward with those projects and the city being able to count those affordable units in our annual progress report, which will be coming forward to council shortly.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think, I mentioned the RENA numbers as a state requirement. To a certain degree, it does align with what we should be doing here in town, and I'm glad to see that we're approaching the issue with an open mind and also with some action. So thank you for that.
Mr. McNamee.
Thank you, Mayor. Wonderful report, thank you. And that we do have development, but it's not an overwhelming amount of development here in the city. So we're trying to meet state RENA numbers as well as provide affordable housing for people who want to come here. I noticed a uptick for miscellaneous permits, 2021, 22, somewhere in there. What exactly is a miscellaneous permit? Give me some categories and why that uptick for that particular year.
Mr. Kearns will move forward with that.
Yeah.
You're punting is what you're doing.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's sort of a catch-all category. There's a lot of permits that we process that are high-volume permits, but don't necessarily show up on activity reports and those type of things. Those are community event permits, special event permits, special use permits for alcoholic beverages or uses that are not by right. Those are captured there. There's some modifications, underlying development permits that aren't captured specifically, but are captured in this miscellaneous permit category.
Any correlation why that one year picked up and the others didn't? Any reason why?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Any reason why it upticked on that particular year and sort of leveled out thereafter?
There was a large number of special events that occurred. That was part of the uptick. There was more of our home occupation permits that were issued. People were doing business out of their homes and those types of things. So, those are all captured in that category. But I think people working from home and people start doing business from home is part of the reason for that uptick.
Excellent. Now, ADUs. Right now, it's one that, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that the owner of the property needs to live in either the main unit, the main house, the ADU or the junior ADU in order for that to qualify. If I'm wrong, let me know. But we had an investor come in from Oxnard last year and was not given a use permit because they made it clear they weren't going to sign the affidavit that they were going to live in any one of those 3 units. And it came to my attention that they're allowing this in Oxnard and other cities. And from what city manager and city attorney have told me, that's a violation of the law. We right now in Thousand Oaks are approaching a passive sort of enforcement where the neighbor has to know that the person is not living next door in the ADU in the back or the junior ADU or the house. And I have been an advocate to say that's not the reason why we have ADUs is to allow investors to be enriched by this, but to provide housing. I am one of proactive, knock on the door once a year. Mr. and Ms. Jones, are they home? Oh, they don't live here on the facility? Okay, thank you very much. That kind of enforcement. Is that a correct understanding that one, they've got to live in one of those 3 junior ADUs or house? 2, we're getting investors coming in who may be violating this requirement by the state that they have to live in one of those 3 units. Could you clarify that for me and make certain I'm on track with this?
Sure. I'll take the first stab at that, and the city attorney may decide to add or not. There's been subsequent legislation on the state level that no longer requires the occupancy requirement for ADUs. In a city such as Thousand Oaks, there's always been an interest from developers in moving forward with residences here. Part of the benefit from the policies in the new general plan adopted by council is protecting our single-family neighborhoods, whereby we right-size the density in the single-family neighborhoods to maintain the character of life that's currently existing there, From a staff perspective, on an annual basis, going door to door is more of an active enforcement role as opposed to a complaint-based enforcement, which the city currently has now from an enforcement perspective. If there were to be a switch in that type of enforcement, that obviously would have a staff impact, and that's something that City Council would have to evaluate as part of making that particular change.
Come back to that real quick. Then you said yes, that right now, the way the law reads, that you have to have the owner living in one of those 3 units, or no?
You do not.
Or that changed? Okay, thank you. So essentially, then the compliance issue there goes away, and investors can come in, buy a parcel, and put a junior ADU or an ADU if it fits in with our general plan, correct? Okay. You said ADUs can be changed over into condos. Does that involve changing the parcel and that it becomes its own separate parcel number and property taxes and so forth? How has that worked?
That is correct. So from a state legislation perspective, it's an optional program right now. City Council would have to opt into that program. We have not been given direction to move forward with that, so it currently doesn't apply in Thousand Oaks. However, hypothetically, if that were to move forward, a parcel map would be required, or in this instance, a condo map, in order to separate the ADU from the primary parcel on site, the primary housing unit on site.
It would require, HOA, CCNRs, that type of a situation too.
Correct.
Right. But it would be a separate entity. It would not be under that one parcel. You now have 2
You
parcels
basically
on
have
that.
2 parcels.
Mr. Powers.
Yeah, and to be clear, Council, this is brand new legislation, one of dozens and dozens of bills that are passed annually. Thankfully, this is an opt-in bill. My recommendation on these is always urging caution to see how things play out. What you generally find is if there are early adopters, those early adopters iron out what ends up being the problems associated with these kinds of actions. And as you might imagine, there will be a wide variety of public opinion on this concept. So with that, I would just, so this is one to watch carefully. It's certainly important to have a knowledge of, because I would not be surprised if you were a large lot owner, if you might have a desire to do that. Your neighbors probably may or may not feel great about that. So there's a lot of those things to watch. It's good to have an awareness and just kind of keep eyes on what's happening. And then in the event that we want to take some action downrange, we'll have the opportunity to do that.
Mayor, that was my 3 questions, but I have 2 more. So if you want to go to someone else and then come back to me, or do you want me to finish up the last 2?
Yeah, that sounds good. Good question so far.
Okay.
So far.
So if I don't, you can stop me at any point. You're fine. Okay. Affordable housing and faith-based property. One of the things that held this up in Sacramento was that the unions were mandating that they be part of union labor to actually build on those religious properties. Did that actually get through into this bill, that it must be union labor that actually does the building on these faith-based properties?
That is correct. That is what is meant by prevailing wage in the bill, and it does apply in this particular instance.
And CEQA was streamlined, so that way it was able to get through quicker. Is that correct?
Correct. There is a process by which CEQA can be streamlined for projects such as this. However, here in Thousand Oaks, that process still has to take into account any sensitive species that may exist. Where it would apply here, that's a highly likelihood that it would not be exempt. There are additional studies that would be required as part of that process.
Interesting concept that they want to put in and build affordable housing on religious property, yet they're mandating union labor, which drives up the price 30%, according to UC Berkeley's study. So it's like in conflict there that, yeah, we want affordable housing, but we're going to bring in labor that's going to make it unaffordable. So curious to see, as we say, how the early adopters, how this all works out. And my last one, Mayor, if I may.
I'm going to go to Mr. Newman, and I'm going to come back to you.
Very good, sir.
Okay? Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember McNamee, for raising the question about reversion or I guess overturning of the requirement for owner occupancy at ADUs. I just have a couple of questions so I better understand this new law. First, just a comment City Manager Powers made, do I understand correctly by the opt-in nature of this, that this council would have to approve of change for there to be no owner occupancy? Is that a correct understanding?
For owner occupancy?
No, for the opposite, for speculators. Let's put this in two buckets. Let's say
Okay.
owner lives there, and the other bucket is owner doesn't live there. Previously, the situation was owner had to live there. So my question is that currently the situation until we vote to change it? Or does this new law say, no, you can do whatever you want?
Got it.
So I'll say the opt-in component I was referencing was regarding the ability to sell off ADUs, not the owner occupancy component, right? The ability to basically create a separate parcel on your property. That program would require an opt-in by the city council to allow for residents to leverage that.
All right, but the residency requirement, you're saying,
Separate issue.
has
handled under
gone
separate
away.
legislation.
There is currently, under this change in state law, there is no residency requirement.
Correct. For the detached ADUs, that requirement was changed by subsequent legislation last cycle.
And does this change refer to new construction going forward, or does it apply to existing ADUs?
It applies to both.
I see. All right, thank you.
Mr. Engler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The conversation sparked a question in my mind concerning the properties owned by religious organizations. They could come in and want to put affordable housing in, notwithstanding some of the issues that Mr. McNamee brought up about cost and everything. We have a number of restrictions on any development. Would those restrictions still apply? Restrictions such as slope, degree of slope and that sort of thing? Do those still apply even to a religious organization under this law?
Excuse me. Environmental characteristics would still be required to be studied under CEQA. That doesn't go away with this particular legislation. What this does is give educational institutions and religious institutions the ability to move forward with affordable housing projects. With this particular bill, the goal or the key of it is to get affordable housing in the lowest of the income categories, which is why they cap the moderate units that could be included as part of the project. So any project that takes advantage of this legislation could have a maximum of 20% in the moderate category, with the balance being affordable in a low or very low income category.
And Kelvin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we could also impose any objective development standard that's been approved by the city.
That is correct.
So you have both some environmental components and the objective standards.
The reason I bring it up, there's also sort of competing state legislation having to do with development in fire risk zones and everything else. I'm just trying to see, just in my own mind, what would have priority in those types of conflicts.
Mr. McNamee?
Thank you, Mayor. Last one. I noticed that we have gone forward with digital submission of plans. Our city takes approximately 5 to 6 years from the time that a plan is submitted to the time that we actually get occupancy. And the desire was to do this digital type plan application so that way we could expedite reviews of the plans and get them back quicker. Any feedback as far as speeding up the process so that we were more efficient? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, so the portions of that process that the city controls, we've absolutely made strides in terms of getting plans in and out quicker. The largest part of that time frame from beginning to end is controlled by the actual developer themselves, and it can be impacted from things such as the amount of time it takes to prepare construction drawings. Also, they're subject to weather once construction starts. So if it's a year with heavy rain, that delays the construction schedule. If materials to build it are out of stock or supply is low, that can impact it. So the largest portions of that process are not actually controlled by the city. We're quite efficient in providing the inspections, issuing the permits, running through the plan checks, and moving people in and out of that planning process. And the TL24 program is helping us not only streamline that process, but document our successes through it.
Always looking for efficiencies. Thank you. Mayor?
Very good questions from everybody. Get an A. Now we'll see if I can come up with one, right? Mr. Parker, let me ask you this from kind of a big picture outlook. If I read that slide right, we had $180 million worth of permit valuation last year. And if you want to make the assumption that development in our community is a plus, people are investing in the future of Thousand Oaks, how would you say we did in 23, and what would be your prognosis for 24?
That's a great question. The person on the panel most qualified to answer that is going to be our building official, Jesse Biunda.
Okay, great.
So luckily, the prognosis is looking positive. We did see a slowdown in the actual total valuation number from last year, but ultimately, that's just as that has been addressed by Mr. Parker in supply chain issues, funding, and interest rates. We're seeing that as soon as that establishes, the projects and permits are ready to go. Most of these projects are really looking to queue themselves up, and we're seeing that quite a bit in the building department, looking to maintain permits in active status and starting construction as much as they can without really having the project develop and kick off, right? So shovels in the ground from that perspective are really on standby, and that's kind of one of the things that we're seeing now, where there's a lot of work preparing. There's a lot of change orders happening for us and change of plans to change those supply issue challenges that they're dealing with trying to get the projects off the ground. So it's looking positive.
Excellent. So we're looking for an uptick
Yes.
in 24 due to some macroeconomic developments, like potentially lower interest rates, maybe some lower construction costs. And, this is a very important issue because, needless to say, the city needs to grow a little bit, and we need some housing. And so, and I think we probably slumped a little bit in 23 because of some of the economic environment, but it's your opinion that 24 we should resume, get back on track.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at the numbers that provided, you saw a December uptick, and that's actually a positive indicator for us in this coming year.
All right, good to hear.
Yes.
Good to hear. All righty.
Mr. Mayor, just one quick
Yes,
comment.
Mr. Engler.
I was sort of a secret shopper the other day. Just happy to report I took a permit out for some home improvement at my house. Permit was approved within an hour and 20 minutes. And that's a compliment, I think, to the new way we're doing things. I'm looking forward to being able to call for inspection online. So I'll give a further report when the job is done.
Good to hear.
Were you incognito?
Good to hear. So our process is speeding up, the supply chain disruptions are dying down, interest rates may come down a little bit, construction costs may come down a little. All that bodes well for some of the important things we need here in the city of Thousand Oaks. Appreciate the report. Very good. And I am going to be looking for a motion on 12A. Mr. Newman.
Sure, I will go ahead and move item 12A with thanks to the CDD staff.
All right. And we have a motion on the floor. Call for the vote, please.
Councilmember Engler?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newman?
Aye.
And Mayor Adam?
Yes.
And that motion passes 4-0 with Councilmember Taylor absent.
Thank you very much. All righty. As is our custom, Mr. Powers, you get the last word.
Thanks, Mayor Adam. We'll be back in a couple weeks on the 13th of February. We have a couple of significant reports that night. We have a large-scale program, sidewalk maintenance and displacement removal agreement that we'll be bringing forward as a department report, and we also have our 23-24 Community Environmental Enhancement Grant recommendations that evening. That's on the 13th of February.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Well, actually, Mr. Newman, did you have a final thought?
I do, and very quickly, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to acknowledge in the audience tonight is Mr. Dan Weekle. As part of our consent calendar tonight, we approved his appointment to the Ventura County Citizens Transportation Advisory Commission. After being interviewed by Councilmember McNamee and myself, and Mayor, I think you have met Mr. Weekle during one of those walk and roll events.
I did.
He organized, I think, the biggest show, certainly with the biggest YouTube and Instagram presence. So I'm looking forward to working with you, and just wanted to thank you for stepping up for this. Thank you.
Well, thank you for acknowledging that, Mr. Newman. And if we have no other comments, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you all.